In this November setup, we're going to explore the ways that humanity keeps track of time. Hey y'all, welcome back to Dots and Beyond. My name is Beth, and today we are going to set up November in my son Kenny's bullet journal. I have gone ahead and done a lot of the stenciling in this setup already because you guys don't need to see me stencil letters. You've seen me do that a lot. Now, I never quite know what Kenny's going to come up with until he tells me, but for this November setup, he definitively wanted to explore time, and he wanted some dark autumn moody colors. For this setup, I thought I would tap into the Crayola Super Tips, so I have a few colors that I have selected here, as well as one or two Tombos that I needed to supplement that color palette. For the other decorative elements on the page, I decided I wanted to nestle timepieces sitting down into clouds, and so that's what we're going to start sketching out here. It's literally just the most basic cloud shape possible. Just little bubbles across the page to make a cloud shape, intertwining some of them all the way across the bottom. And I will use this element throughout the setup to keep things cohesive. For this first timepiece, I decided to do a large pocket watch, and for that I do need a perfect circle. So we are going to reach for my Helix Circle Maker and outline the elements of this pocket watch. I use this Helix Circle Maker in almost every single setup that I do, so it is linked down below along with the rest of the supplies if you would like to pick up one for yourself. And then the font stencil that I chose for this setup, I picked specifically because it had the Roman numerals on the bottom, and I knew I wanted to include some of those Roman numerals on my clock pieces. I did not, however, want to crowd the watch face, so for this particular watch, I just did the Roman numeral 12 and then filled in the other time spots with little lines to indicate where those would go. And then this is a Mr. Pen circle template. This one I've used just to create a crescent moon, which will be another element that appears on every page. And along with that crescent moon, I am decorating the page with some leaves, falling leaves, as well as some sparkles. So I did use some leaf stencils. Again, those are linked below along with the font stencil. But once those are down on the page in pencil, I'm just tracing over them with the pen. I'm not going to get the stencil back out. And then I also had some sparkles. I chose to make those a little larger when I was doing the inking in. And then this particular stencil has some arrows on it, and I'm using part of one of those arrow stencils to make the hands of the clock. And that's one of the reasons I like using stencils, is I can use a lot of the different shapes for different purposes. Here on the left, I'm putting in a quote that inspired the entire setup, but I wanted to show you how I can stencil directly with the color, but I keep something to clean the stencil around with it. So I do have a tissue here to the side, so that I can go ahead and color straight over the stencil instead of outlining with the pen first. The one thing you do have to do when you do this is to just kind of clean off that area. There's very little color on the tissue, but what color is on the tissue would have transferred to smudging on your page if you sort of don't do this step in between. As I color in the letters of the quote, I'm also going to begin coloring in some of the other elements on the page. This particular quote I found as I was brainstorming what to do for Kenny on this setup, and it reads, "If a year was tucked inside of a clock, then autumn would be magic hour." And once all of those elements are on the page, it really is just like a coloring book and filling in each one of those doodles. Now, I did not want to fill in my clouds completely, and so that's where I have chosen to place the dark blue as well as the dark purple, and just outlining the inside of each of those bubbles to give it a little bit of a cartoony feel, but also just not solidly fill in the clouds. I really didn't want to do that. I didn't want to get out any paints, and I just really wanted to keep it as simple as possible. After his very involved October setup, a little something simple was what I needed. Now here we are going to move on to his calendar page. Kenny does prefer a large calendar grid. Now, I have had somebody ask me about these little clips that I am using in place of a binder clip. These are the clips off of the specialty bags of coffee at Starbucks. And Kenny brings them to me because he is my household barista and he does work at Starbucks. And that is where I'm getting those little clips off of the bags of coffee. And as you can see here, I am repeating some of the same elements, the very simple bubbly clouds, the leaves, although I did make some draping down from a cloud, the moon, and then the timepiece for this page is an hourglass. And that's probably the hardest thing that I drew on the page, was to just get that hourglass shape correct. Added in the lines for the calendar, and then we're again gonna just color in like this is a coloring book. Once all of the doodles are in place and colored in, I do need to go ahead and fill in the calendar. So to do that, I am going to use the 0.5 on my headers. And then I originally wasn't going to use a lighter shaped Tombow, but I decided I wanted to highlight the top row of every single date. And this is an N89, which is a little warmer of a gray. Instead of being a blue gray, it's kind of a warm toned gray. And then just numbered in directly below the headers to get all of the dates on the calendar. And again, if you haven't watched one of Kenny's videos before, he has very, very tiny writing, so a calendar grid setup works great for him. And that will wrap up the November calendar spread in Kenny's journal, and we will move on to the weeklies. Now we do fit 2 weeks on one spread, a week on the left and a week on the right. Kenny does like to write in an 8x8 square box, so these setups don't change a whole lot other than where we place the 8x8 squares. I did decide I wanted to go ahead and make those squares, at least on the left spread, the same color as the November, and I am going to do away with the ruler and just freehand these. So some of them are a little wibbly wobbly, but time is a little wibbly wobbly, so I think it is fine. And then on the right spread, I popped in some blue boxes just for a little bit of contrast. And then again, we are fitting in our doodles, and I specifically put the boxes at the top of the page so we could do the doodles and the clouds at the bottom. And here I'm nestling a digital alarm clock down into the clouds. He hasn't used a digital alarm clock since the age of smartphones, but I thought it would be fun to go ahead and put one here. I do alternate between the 0.05 and the 0.02 Pigma Micron. The clouds are a 0.05, as is the clock. The 0.02 I use for the dates, and then I also use it for the leaves to give it just a finer of a line and a little bit more subtlety. And once again, I am coloring in the lines. I do go over some areas once or twice to give it a little bit more shadow or a little bit more depth, but I wasn't even really concerned with that. And then I am using the same N89 Tombow to highlight the top row of every box. And then we'll just go ahead and write the dates in on top of those. These boxes are pretty standard. This is what we do every month for him. We did explore doing vertical columns or something else, and he just didn't like that idea at all, so we're just going to keep what worked. And that will wrap up his weekly spread for the first 2 weeks of November, and we will move on to the second 2 weeks of November. And this is set up almost identically. I have changed colors, and I have swapped the November to the right side of the spread instead of the left side of the spread. And we'll use a different timepiece, but other than that, this is going to look very much the same. I'm going to put the doodles down on the page in much the same order, starting with our bubbly clouds. I'll then stencil in the moon as well as some leaves and draw in some sparkles. And then, of course, I chose another timepiece for this page, and on this page I chose a cuckoo clock, which is not as difficult to draw as you might think. I started with the circle in the center, drew a square around it, put a triangle on top, and then some embellishments that I did with some leaf stencils, and then just some circles for the clock mechanism hanging down. We'll pop in the color here, so you don't need to see me color again, and that will wrap up his second set of weeklies for November 2022. This last spread will be another standard one for Kenny. He does like to have a playlist where he can jot down new songs that he has discovered for the month. Also likes to have a monthly reflection, so that is what we're going to do on this spread. I'm starting off by creating a cross on his reflection page. This is going to be sort of a clock to separate his reflection items. And then at the bottom, I am sketching in a sundial. It's a little wonky, it's not perfect, and that is okay. But I did want to get a sundial into the spread, so that's what we have nestled into our clouds here on the playlist and reflection page. One more time, we are reaching for the stencils. The first is the Roman numerals again, so I can put in the 4 hands of the clock here. The top being noon, and then 3 and 6 and 9 on the reflection page. And then I will grab another stencil to put in some cloud headers for his playlist. I could have freehanded these, but I did want them to all be uniform, and so I grabbed a cloud stencil just to make those here. And then finishing out the doodles with some sparkles and leaves falling from the moon down to the sundial before getting ready to color in everything again. If you have made it this far in the video, leave me some sort of time emoji down in the comments below and answer this question. What do you use for your alarm clock? Do you use your phone, your iWatch, a standard old alarm clock? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments below. And if you are one of those fascinating humans who does not use an alarm clock and wakes up naturally every day, let me know your secret in the comments as well. Time is such a fascinating theme for autumn or November. I've only recently discovered that both of my sons have a fascination with time. One more with clocks and timepieces, and the other with time itself. So as we get ready to flip through this, I do want to thank you for taking your time today to watch this video. And if you found it helpful, please go ahead and give me a big thumbs up. It definitely helps out this channel and helps me grow. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and consider subscribing. We'd love to have you as part of the Dots and Beyond family. The next video up will be my November setup. What celebration or festival from around the world do you think I will be celebrating in November? I will give you one clue in that it is not a traditional celebration. That will wrap up this more doodly traditional bullet journal setup in Kenny's bullet journal for November. Don't forget to leave me a time emoji in the comments below, and I will catch you in the next one.